Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
It is that time. I thought, TCOB was fun, but it's time to have even more fun right now and get into this rapid fire.
Yes, we've got to take care of rapid fire business now. So Braden Lenzy was asked this week if his season has been frustrating. Here is the full phrasing of the question from a legend in his own mind, Angelo DiCarlo. And then you get Braden Lenzy's response as well.
What's this season been like for you, though? Obviously, there has to have been some frustrations of, man, I could have had this one, could have had that one, and it just didn't work out for whatever reason. How has it been navigating that and then finally getting your moment?
Yeah, navigating it's business, the world, and at the end of the day, I think I'm in a position where I get a free education. NIL is lovely. I think at the end of the day, I don't really have much to be frustrated at when I know I get to play for the most storied program in the country. There's a lot of people who have it a lot worse. So I just try to keep my head high and just be happy. I love being here, and I'm excited about it, and I'm excited to play at Boston College. So to answer your question, it's very easy to be positive, because how can I not be positive when I'm representing Notre Dame at the highest level?
So what do you think when you hear that from Braden Lenzy, Jess?
I think that is a very mature response. I think that is a guy who realizes kind of where his potential stands and all of the things that he has been able to do with his opportunity to play, football at the University of Notre Dame outside of actually playing football itself. Like he talked about the education, the NIL deals that have come up. And we all know that Braden Lenzy is a super speedy guy. And there's been kind of more expectations and a not lack of, but his expectations compared to what his output has not been on the same page. And I think that is obviously frustrating for any athlete out there. You want to be good, you want to be able to produce, but it seems like based off his responses is he's more bought in on being a team player, whatever it takes for the team to win. He doesn't care about his stats. He just loves the fact that he gets to play football for the University of Notre Dame and really contribute to the team any way possible. And I really commend him for the maturity in his answer, because it easily could have been like, oh, I wish I had more catches, or, oh, I'm not being utilized how I should be utilized. It was, no, I am happy for everything that, playing football at Notre Dame has given me outside of, maybe not being at the personal production level that he would like.
Yeah, and I mean, was then he was going to go to Oregon, and then he ultimately decides to come to Notre Dame. And have there been some there have been up and downs in Braden Lenzy's career, but he's never cashed it in and said, well, you know what, I'm going to go someplace else and do something different. He is stuck with Notre Dame, and he was given the opportunity to basically, make excuses or vent or do whatever he wanted, but that's not what he did. And I also found it interesting that he brought up the NIL deal, because we don't hear about NIL the way we do with some other schools, whether it's Texas A&M or pick your school in the SEC. We don't hear about it as much here with Notre Dame, but obviously there is some NIL at play, because he brought up NIL. What did he say? NIL is lovely. It's
very
working well
casual.
for
Oh,
Braden
the
Lenzy.
NIL is lovely.
Yeah, that's right. It's working well for Braden Lenzy. So I think it was a great answer and a very, very team answer. And I don't think it was like a fake, forced, hiding behind it team answer as well. So great stuff from Braden Lenzy. And I think that there are a lot of those kind of guys on this team. I'm sure that a lot of them are frustrated, but they're where they are, and they're sticking it out together. So
I think that also is a great reflection on your head coach. I think that that truly comes from a leader who has convinced you not to buy in, but basically buy into the overall success of the team, and not really get caught up about your own personal success. So I also commend Marcus Freeman in that respect. That I think that's the kind of culture that he's building, is even if you're not the star player and you're still contributing to your team, you're still going to be respected and honored as the star player, because at the end of the day, you're contributing to what matters the most, and that's winning at the end of the day.
Right. So we had the questions from Tyler Buchner come up in the chat. We'll go ahead and throw those up there right now. Milton Fan 15 says there have been a lot of SI joint injuries by quarterbacks this year. Glenn Ewers, Tyler Buchner, Bryce Young, but only Buchner had surgery and out for the season. Do you know why? I mean, I'm just going to guess that his was probably more severe than the other guys. I think Marcus Freeman said it was grade 3 when it happened. Now it's his non-throwing shoulder, but and like, is that what what's his name in Cleveland? Baker Mayfield had last year. Was his an SI joint, Jesse?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was an SI joint, and he was wearing a big kind of like shoulder brace. And that's kind of
And it was his
that
non-throwing shoulder too.
right, and that was that a lot of people contribute that to being part of Baker Mayfield's downfall is, dude, if
I
you're
thought so
hurt,
too.
why
Yep.
are you not taking the time to recover and because you're just going to continue to play bad after there's already been kind of questions about your performance before, so why put
Yeah.
yourself in that situation?
And then the other question from CMAC is, if earlier report from today turns out true, Tyler Buchner is way ahead of rehab schedule and practicing in his goals to play in the bowl game, not losing red shirt. Do you let him? I mean, he's only played in 2 games right now, and if he's healthy and if he's cleared and and he is that far ahead of schedule, I don't know why you wouldn't. I think that it is a bowl game. It is not going to be a college football playoff game. And so it gives you the opportunity. I mean, heck, if you wanted to, you could play both of those guys out there and, and like do some stuff however you want to split that up. You've got a guy in Drew Pine who's been out there all season. He can do some things. You've got Tyler Buchner, who was running a different offense, quite honestly, early in the season. I mean, if he's recovered and he's 100%, if the doctors clear him, you're always going to be at risk for, every football player on any given play is at risk for injury. So if the doctors clear him and they say he's 100%, and again, it's his non-throwing shoulder, so you're not going to risk, messing up his throwing shoulder for the future. I don't know why you wouldn't play him if that indeed ends up being the case, that he's ready to go.
This is a very hard answer for me, and it's hard for me because there's a lot of questions that I there's no possible way to know the answer to. First of all, does Notre Dame shift their offensive mentality the way that they did when Drew Pine became quarterback if Buchner doesn't get hurt? Essentially meaning, if Buchner continues the season, do we still see the same type of offense? It's just Buchner is obviously playing quarterback. And if so, then I would have less reservations about letting Buchner play in the bowl game, because I think Buchner, if he's going to play the similar, style, if Tommy Rees is going to call the same formations, plays, sets the same way that he would with Pine, Buchner adds a dimension to the offense that only makes them better, because he's better with his feet, and you're
Yes.
running the ball with that kind of dominant success. There's going to be more running lanes for Buchner. That's another guy that they have to honor, which obviously helps you in the passing game more because of a guy having to be dedicated, to Buchner as well in the play action RPO game. And so that's where I'm leaning towards. I would like Buchner to play in the bowl game because it allows the offense to add another dimension. But at the same time, you've built this rhythm with Pine, and I just don't know that if the offense would be called in the same manner of when Buchner is quarterback. And so that's kind of my answer in a roundabout ways. If the offense is going to be called the same way, I have no problems with Buchner being played. But if it's going to go back to the offense that we saw against Ohio State and Marshall, I don't want to see Buchner play, because that isn't what's going to make this offense successful.
No, and I'll get to that. Brandon was asking, even if he can play, even if he does play in the bowl game, can't he keep his red shirt? Yes, it's only his 3rd game. So, if it's just the bowl game, then that's 3 total for the season. 4 is the limit. You can play in 4 and still keep your red shirt. So he still gets the season of eligibility. So, I think it's a win-win, again, if he's 100% cleared and all that. But I agree completely with what you said about the offense. We said from the time that we saw Drew Pine, like in successful Drew Pine era, which seems like years ago at this point, in successful Drew Pine era, second half of Cal through North Carolina and BYU, we're like, Why wasn't Tommy Rees using this offense with Tyler Buchner? It was a completely different look. That's what I want to see. I want to see Tyler Buchner run the same offense that Drew Pine has been running. And then, just like you said, it opens up a different element. There are many different layers. And I don't think in that situation either that you have to be so Tyler Buchner reliant. The offensive line is in a different place. It is head and shoulders better than it was in those first couple of games of the season.
Your running backs are in a completely different dimension.
Yeah, exactly. But that's also like when we talk about quarterback recruiting and all this different stuff, this program has to get to a place where it's like, well, if this quarterback is in, this is the offense we're running. But if this quarterback is in, this is the offense that we're running. I understand that each quarterback, especially when you have different skill sets like they have, that each quarterback is going to have some things that are more suited to their strengths. But I think the program as a whole, to continue to get better, has to have quarterbacks that like you plug in and you're still running the same offense. You're not running something vastly different just because it's one quarterback or the other. One might still be more mobile than the other, but if you're going to be successful, I think you've got to run the same thing. It can't be these drastic shifts the way we've seen.
Yeah, and I think that as fans, that's the biggest, thing that everyone kind of bellyaches about every year, and rightfully so, is it shouldn't matter who's quarterback. The quarterback should be recruited based on the offense you run, not vice versa. Your quarterback shouldn't be dictating the offense that you run.
Right. Okay, so Josh Lugg said this week that the Notre Dame offensive line's top 3 goals every year are as follows. Number 1, help Notre Dame win. Number 2, be the best version of themselves. And number 3, win the Joe Moore Award. And so Notre Dame, of course, the Joe Moore semi-finalists were announced this week. Notre Dame was not on that list. He says it's disappointing, and it's going to fuel them even more this week against Boston College and next week against USC. So what do you think it means, Jess?
I like Lugg's response, and I think that is the correct hierarchy on how you should look at, being a successful offensive line. And I don't – him throwing Boston College in there is irrelevant. That was a direct shot at USC because USC is a semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award. And I think that, they feel slighted for the fact that they aren't on that list, and they're going to play against a team who is on that list. And so that is definitely fuel that is just extra, fire for them. And again, you can't look, I think he only threw Boston College in there because you can't overlook Boston College, right? You have to get through Boston College before you get to USC. But that comment was directly, pointed for USC week, and the fact that they want to prove a statement that they are the better offensive line, and there is no reason that USC should be on that list. And there is a lot of reasons why Notre Dame should be on that list. And before we get too deep into it, I just think it's a joke, first and foremost, that Notre Dame isn't on that list and USC is on that list.
That's right. It is a head scratcher for sure. I think if Notre Dame's offensive line had played the way that they have played for maybe the last month or so, again, the way they started the season, the
first four were rough.
The Stanford game, why you weren't able to push Stanford around a little bit. Again, you can talk about game plan and stuff like that. I think that plays into it because I think that game plan played too much into Stanford's strength. But still, like if you're that caliber, if you're that Joe Moore Award caliber offensive line, you've got to be able to maul a team that came into that game with one win. So I think that those things probably do play against them. If they had played the way that they've played for this last month all season, I think it's a different story. But you're absolutely right. But maybe it's a silver lining, because if you're going to tick off these guys, if you're going to make them feel slighted, like they've got something to prove these last couple of games, I think that's nothing but good for Notre Dame because they have been really good. But, if maybe that's what it takes to motivate them even a little bit more when you're going up again against a pretty solid Boston College defense, when you look at it statistically, especially, and then against that USC team that they should be able to have some success running the ball against next week. I think it's nothing but good that you're ticking them off and giving them even another reason to go out there with some fire in their bellies.
I completely agree with that.
All right. So Josh Lugg, thanks for that. So Boston College considers Notre Dame its top rival. Do you buy or sell the Irish and Eagles playing more often going forward?
This one is tough because Boston College and Notre Dame have only been playing since 1975. They've played 25 total games in the series. Notre Dame leads 16-9, and knock on wood, Notre Dame has won the last 8 in a row, dating back to 2009. And I am a big fan of rivalries, and especially when there's a trophy on the line. There is a trophy on the line when Notre Dame and Boston College play each other.
Trophies.
Trophies are fun, man. Like if you're not playing for, you usually only get a trophy for winning your conference and a bowl game. And Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference, and more than likely they'll be playing for a bowl game. I don't think that Notre Dame should be like seeking out to play Boston College every year, but if Boston College is on the schedule, consistently, I'm okay with it. It is another kind of minor level rivalry when you take into terms Notre Dame's kind of big overall rivals, bigger picture. So I know it means more to Boston College, but to me, I have no problem with keeping them on the schedule pretty consistently, as long as you're not like, oh, we need to play Boston College every year, that kind of situation. I'm okay with consistently rolling Boston College through the schedule and keeping this kind of rivalry intact going forward.
It's funny because this quote unquote rivalry, whatever you want to call it, which again means more to Boston College than it does to Notre Dame, it more or less took the place of the Miami series. That Notre Dame used to play Miami. That went back a long time. It heightened in the 80s when Miami was good, but they played every year, Notre Dame and Miami, from 1971 to 1990, and then it went away in 1990, and Boston College and Notre Dame had only played 3 times prior to 1992. Then from 1992 through 2012, they played 19 times. So that, they started playing a lot once they did away with that Miami series. So, again, that kind of bumped Boston College up and gave them a chance. And that's what turned it into that rivalry. And obviously beating Notre Dame in 1993, really early on took it to another level. It's along the lines, and I think you kind of alluded to this, it means more to Boston College than it means to Notre Dame. So I'm fine with it being what it is right now. Since 2015, this is going to be the 5th time that they have played them. So they're playing them, like every, not quite every other year. They play them enough. I think that it is enough. Because of this ACC agreement, they're going to play Boston College. I would rather see them play like a Clemson, like we talked about last week. I'd rather see Clemson on the schedule more often if you're going to like prioritize, or maybe you even come up with like a pod system where like there are certain teams that Notre Dame is going to play more often. But I've got no problem with the way they're playing them now. I don't think they need to play them more because, again, it means more to the other side than it means to Notre Dame, especially when you're not playing every year. It's never going to mean as much to Notre Dame as it means to the guys in those other colored uniforms. So I don't necessarily want to see him play more. I'm fine with the way it is right now.
I thought that DT Roll Hunter made a very good point in the chat, and he said, I don't know what the 4 for 40 means, but MSU, Michigan State, Boston College alternating would be a solid rotation with Purdue. And I think that's a great idea when you have Michigan State, who they haven't played in a while. You have Boston College and Purdue. Hey, those, I like those 3 trophy games right there. You rotate them, every 3rd year, and you're keeping these kind of consistent, kind of old, these rivalries that you've had, maybe more so in the past that you're kind of bringing back, to the current times or to the future. And they're rivalry games. There's trophies on the lines, and you're consistently kind of playing these teams and rotating them. And I think that's a great idea for teams that you don't get to play, as often, but still kind of continuing these kind of what you might consider lower level or not as, high level rivalries that Notre Dame might have currently at the moment, like USC, for example.
Yeah, I concur. Fill in the blank. It's blank that the Big Ten West standings have 4 teams sharing the division lead with 4-3 records.
It's an embarrassment. You know, you know how I feel about the Big Ten, so we'll get into it right now. The Big Ten West, first of all, the Big Ten East is frankly kind of a joke to me. You have 2 teams at the top, of Michigan and Ohio State. They haven't played really anyone else. You know, the rest of their schedule. Brian and I ripped on Michigan last week for their out-of-conference schedule of Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn. Like, that's your out-of-conference schedule, really?
The schedule was so dumbed down that Jim Harbaugh could just say, well, we're going to start one quarterback in one game, start the other quarterback in the other game.
He had open tryouts for his quarterbacks in the beginning of the season. So those games aren't hard when you can have quarterback tryouts, right? And so that's the Big Ten East in a nutshell. Like, Ohio State has inflated numbers, but it's like they don't play anyone either, right? And then you go over to the Big Ten West, and they're even weaker than an already perceived weak Big Ten East. And so it's just always a cakewalk at the end of the season for whoever comes out on top of the Big Ten East, because the West never provides, any sort of resistance. And that's what's annoying. In order for me to have respect for the Big Ten, I need an elite team to come out of the Big Ten West, an elite team to come out of the Big Ten East, because I at least know that the Big Ten East is going to be challenged multiple times per year. And frankly, it's not just going to be a regular season kind of, victory. The Big Ten championship should matter. And the West is consistently weak. Iowa plays good defense, but their offense is always bad. Wisconsin, kind of same story. There's never, in my opinion, a team that has, prominence coming out of the West, at least, what's felt like the last 10 or 15 years.
It's funny because like a couple weeks before the USC UCLA news broke this summer that they were going to the Big Ten, one of the things that the Big Ten was going to look at, I think they were going to bring it to a vote, was getting rid of divisions for this very reason. Like look at what the Big 12 does. And I think the Pac-12 went to this year. Yeah, as well. Like, get rid of divisions so that you have your best teams playing for championships at the end of the season. If you're going to have a championship game, make it matter. Don't have it be one really good team against some team that happens to win a division where random lines are drawn to determine who's in the, in the divisions to begin with, when obviously you've got Ohio. I mean, wouldn't the Big Ten championship game be that much more fun if Ohio State and Michigan were playing like again?
Yeah, it'd just be a rematch every year.
The college football playoff on the line in that game.
Yeah, and then what becomes sticky about that situation is what if Ohio State wins one and then Michigan wins the other? It's like they beat each other. True. And now they've got, potentially one or two losses between the two of them. And it's like, okay, who do we pick potentially to go on to the, earn kind of that playoff spot. So I'm with you. I want to see one big pool instead of, two divided up pools that has one completely weaker side on the other. If you truly want your conference to have a conference championship where the two best teams are represented, you have to go to just one big pool instead of two divided pools.
Completely agree. It gets tougher though. The more you start adding to it, you almost need divisions because you've got so many, but it's like not everybody plays, you're in the same conference to begin with, and obviously you're not playing each other every year. So I just think that it makes more sense to have one team, and then you figure out what your rotation of games that you like, how many, how often you play these teams, how many years, like some of these other conferences have done it where, where they're talking about it, where it's like, you're going to play basically, I think it's the ACC in the proposal that they were looking at, like you're going to play everybody twice in a 4-year, like in a 4-year period, you're going to get a home and home with everybody one way or the other. But there are going to be some certain schools that you're going to play every year still to preserve some rivalries and those kind of things. So I think there's some ways that they can do it. Again, expanding your conference makes things a little bit more difficult, but there are ways to do it. And I think that everyone should just get rid of the divisions, get the best teams in the championship game.
Definitely.
So after Ole Miss lost to Alabama last weekend, someone tried to give Lane Kiffin the old "will always look on the bright side of life" treatment with a question. Here's the exchange at Kiffin's press conference.
135 yards against one of the better rush defenses in the country. I mean, just kind of assess just what you saw through him just throughout 60 minutes.
Yeah, I don't, guys, let me just explain it really well. I don't really give a shit about how many yards we had, how close the game was. We didn't win the game. And 2 years ago, we walked off this field, and I said, we didn't come here to cover spreads. We didn't come here to play with what at the time was the number one team in the country close. So all these things about, well, you did this good, and freshman running back, it doesn't matter. We didn't win the game. So, maybe some other places that's good, or it's been here and good in the past. It ain't good enough. We came here to win, to beat Alabama. We didn't do it. So we're 0-1 today.
I just like little old Lane a little bit more all the time. What do you think, Jess?
I'm a big fan of Lane Kiffin, and this only supports my case for everyone out there. This game, first and foremost, there's no moral victories at any loss. At the end of the day, you're there to win the game. And when you're a school like Ole Miss and you're ranked and you're beating, that game means a lot to Lane Kiffin outside of playing an Alabama team who Ole Miss hasn't had a lot of success with recently. And the fact that you want to beat, your mentor, essentially. Lane Kiffin was under Nick Saban's wing there for a while after, some unfortunate situations that happened at USC. And so it only means that much more to you, right? Like that game meant a lot to Lane Kiffin outside of just wanting to beat a good team and some of the stuff that I just kind of talked about there. And I just, the number one thing, in my opinion, is, hang on a second, I lost my train of thought.
There was something else in that Coke earlier today, wasn't there?
No, there's just, I can't, I don't know why, but I lost my train of thought. I really like, the approach that Lane Kiffin is taking. Oh, it came back to me. The real reason why I think that Lane Kiffin wasn't taking moral victories in this game is Ole Miss was a one-loss team, right? And their only loss was to LSU. And when Alabama is reeling, they're at 2 losses, you want to cut their throat. You want to give them that third loss, and you want to advance as a one-loss team and put yourself in that playoff picture. And that's, sorry, I don't know why my mind lost that for a second, but I think that is more importantly what Lane Kiffin was thinking about in that situation is he knows what the difference between a one-loss team and a 2-loss team when it comes to overall pictures. And so moral victories against Alabama while suffering your second loss, there's really nothing that comes from that. You had to win that game for the bigger picture of your overall season.
Yeah. I mean, I think people were trying to give Nick Saban some moral victory stuff early on when he got to Alabama, and he wasn't buying it either. And I just like the attitude, like
exactly.
If you want your program to be climbing, then that's the attitude that you've got to have. No moral victories. We're not sugarcoating it. We're not here for getting our medals for playing a close game with Alabama. Either we win or we lose, and they lost. And I really do. I've said this before. I think that he's really, and maybe that time with Nick Saban there in Alabama is part of what triggered it. But he's really a different coach at this stage in his career than he was. What was that, 15 or so years ago when he was just getting started as a head coach?
Yes.
Final question for tonight. There's been Odell Beckham Jr. to the Cowboys talk this week. Buy or sell OBJ in a Cowboys uniform?
You asked me this question, I think, a couple weeks back, and I was all sell because of the drama that OBJ can provide. And, we've all seen the nightmares that OBJ kind of creates in the locker room. I just think right now, the Cowboys need some sort of second wide receiver threat right now. CeeDee Lamb is doing what he needs to do. But Gallup isn't quite back, from his injuries. Noah Brown is a good wide receiver, but he's not a legit wide receiver too. They drafted Jalen Tolbert. He's showing that he's not ready. And that was shown last week when he couldn't even line up, on the line of scrimmage, and he cost them a big penalty, there in overtime. So to me, I am willing to roll the dice on a guy like OBJ, especially when Dallas is trying to make a playoff push towards the end of the season, right? And they need a legit, wide receiver number 2 if they want to make that deep push into the playoffs. I think that they've established enough with their offensive line and the ability to run the ball. Now I just think they need that passing threat outside of CeeDee Lamb. They need another guy who consistently do it. OBJ has the experience. He rode out with the Rams late last season and got them a Super Bowl. I think that is a role that he can definitely fill with the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean,
Henry agrees.
I think you need to start putting Jesse Stiers featuring Henry on your little
and Henry
on the screen. That's right. Everything you outlined, they need a number 2 receiver. They don't have one. They made that stupid trade, and I realize why they did it, trading Amari Cooper to Cleveland. It was a salary cap dump, but look what they're left with. They moved money, but they also moved a real talent. And besides CeeDee Lamb, they have no receiver. Odell Beckham Jr. is the best option out there. Obviously, assuming that he's going to be full health and all that kind of stuff. It's going to take some time. Assuming they're going to make the playoffs, you've got some time once he gets in there to kind of get him up to speed. They've got to have a number 2 guy because they don't have a number 2 guy right now. Like Noah Brown, when he was healthy, was better when Cooper Rush was in there, but that's because they were both practice squad guys together a couple of years ago. They've got to have a number 2 guy that they don't have right now. And so I'm for it as long as he's healthy. Tommy Guns, have they mentioned what TCOB
late to the party
yet? And Derek says taking care of Buchner, right? I mean, taking care of business, Tommy, taking care of business. You might have to go back and listen to the full show if you jumped in late. That's what TCOB is all about, taking care of business, whether it's sung by Bachman Turner Overdrive or not. All right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. Great stuff as always from you, Jesse. Of course, we'll be back Saturday morning, IB countdown to kickoff from 10 until around noon. And then we've got a 2:30 kickoff, of course, Saturday in what is going to be a frozen tundra at Notre Dame Stadium. I'm curious to see if we get any actual snow accumulation on game day. I think that could be fun. It's been a while since we've seen that.
Same. And I just want to throw out there because I am not yet included in the Irish breakdown weekly picks. I want to throw my pick out there right now. I want to give my prediction. This is the last time people will probably hear from me until, after the game. I got a 41-13 Notre Dame victory over Boston College this weekend. And I feel very confident about that.
I did not pick a lot of points for Notre Dame. I feel like maybe I picked a little bit heavy on Boston College's points, but then I said Saturday that I felt like I probably picked too many points for Navy, and they ended up scoring more than I had them in my prediction. So I think our predictions go up on the website tomorrow. So, and of course, we do our predictions on the show as well on Saturday. And Tommy says he drove through the snowstorm up here last night. Did you see your boy Barstool guy was in South Bend yesterday?
Really? Big Cat?
No, not Big Cat, the other guy, Portnoy.
Oh, Portnoy was in South Bend. I'm
the guy who does all the pizza testing.
Yeah. Well, you know the rules. One bite.
I don't know if I didn't see. I saw him tweet. He tweeted a picture of the Notre Dame South Bend exit sign. I'll have to go look at his Twitter and see if he actually stopped by at any of the pizza establishments and did the one bite test or not.
It's funny because Portnoy is a University of Michigan graduate, so he has nothing but hard feelings for the University of Notre Dame. So I can't imagine that he had any inclinations to stop by the university or anything like that. But I was curious because Big Cat was in Toledo this past weekend for the Battle of I-75, Bowling Green and Toledo, because believe it or not, Big Cat was honored a key to the city by the city of Toledo and was recognized at the University of Toledo. So I thought he was venturing his way back and stopped in South Bend. But interesting to hear that Portnoy, kind of mentioned South Bend because of those reasons. He's a University of Michigan graduate. But my question for you is, before we get going, if you're Portnoy and you have to recommend one pizza spot to him to for South Bend's finest, what are you going for? And I know it's not Barnaby's. You're not a Barnaby's guy. So what are we going with?
I am a Barnaby's guy. We get Barnaby's. Like Barnaby's. See, like a lot of people like Brian, like the Roccos, and I've never been a Roccos fan. I've had it a couple times. I don't think it's that great. It's tough between Barnaby's and Bruno's. Those are like the two that I like the most, Barnaby's and Bruno's. And they're both different enough,
Yes.
but in the same way, they're both good enough that I like them both. So it's tough for me to choose between the two. Which one would you go with?
No, that's what it comes down to me, because obviously Bruno's is the more kind of small size. You eat like 4 or 5, 6, 7 small pieces, the little squares. But then the Bruno's is that thicker, kind of heavier, not a lot of sauce, a lot of heavy toppings, cheese, bread, pepperoni, sausage. Me personally, the pizza I lean towards, I have to go with Bruno's. I really like it a lot. I don't like a lot of sauce. I think Bruno's does a good job of really highlighting their ingredients and giving you a lot of them. So for me, I got to go Bruno's.
Good topping. Like when you get the toppings, there's a lot of toppings on there as well. All right.
We got a lot of Bruno supporters in here now.
I'll have to ask Vince what he says, because Sparks says Bruno's as well. I'll have to see what Vince says, because Vince is typically a fan of anything free when it comes to food. But I'll see if his taste buds actually lead him in one direction or the other.
Vince, as soon as he hears the word free, it's the best food out there.
That's right. That's exactly right. Hit that like button if you would on your way out tonight. Great to be with you once again. Final show of this week. Again, it sounds like an abbreviated next week, because I'm going to be out of town for a majority of the week and the holiday and everything else. We will definitely have the show Monday, though. And of course, we've got IB Countdown to kick off Saturday morning. So we will talk to you on one of those, hopefully. So that's going to do it for tonight. Again, like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, wherever you get your podcast. Do it. Tommy says, come on down to, I still don't know how to say that.
Massian.
Still in get Krause's. All right.
I'll be in Columbus this weekend, so there's a potential.
Heading to Columbus. All right. We will talk to you later. IB Nation Sports Talk.